Okay, well, thank you very much all for coming. We're delighted to see so many people here to launch this project that we've been working on since January 2015. And Marianne and I are going to do the kickoff talk. For those of you who've been here the last day and a half, you'll hear some of this again. There's a lot of people in the room who have worked on Daria Teach, so I'm going to say something at the launch, but maybe everybody who's worked on Daria Teach could just kind of raise their hand so you could see all the people in the room who's participated in it. It's quite a long list, and there's many more people who aren't here.
I think the first part of this will be sort of revisiting some of the points from lecture, our first keynote today at the workshop, which we ended at noon, which was on sort of the landscape that open education resources and open online teaching is presently in. And we were introduced to sort of the intersection between a knowledge economy and open learning. The first part of this will be sort of a revisit of the dilemmas, but maybe also of the opportunities this presents to us as a project that aims to be community-based. So we are in a changing global landscape for education, we all know that. And it's a landscape that for humanities and digital humanities, higher education is a landscape of global competition. It's also a landscape of disruption and maybe also of unbundling. It is sort of, you're picking apart programs and offering also something for like MicroMaster credits and things like that. So you have been having an increased massification of higher education, which can be good, but also has proven to be a challenge. There's been a strong focus on quality assurance for learning outcomes, sort of knowledge, skills, competences. We also discussed that. This gives potential pathways for impact. We could say that part of what we are doing with higher education is actually having research and the way we teach our methods impact society. And it is and it can be a very strong impact. And we're sort of working with our methodologies for criticality, maybe for creativity, moving into construction and into design thinking. And using design thinking for development of teaching resources is actually also part of the way we have been working with Daria Teach. And then we have the whole concept of e-learning, and then came the MOOCs. And the MOOCs, in a way, put the focus on e-learning and the possibilities that e-learning presents. This global landscape also presents us with sort of the knowledge economy and a lot of talk about investment in education and the expected return of investments, be it societal or be it actually for sort of real hardcore economical return of investment in sort of what you would earn during your lifetime as employed. It has also, in a lot of education systems, led to a downsizing of the humanities. So this is from the OECD report, Education at a Glance, which comes every year. This is 2016. And what you can see is sort of the pink one is a change in expenditure in total per country on the investment in education. You would also have the change in the number of students in full-time equivalent, sort of the enrollment of students, and then the equation comes out in sort of the change in expenditure per student. So this is also the way that you can see sort of how do you account for the way investments are made. And that is very much the landscape we are in, I think. And then you would have the exemplary MOOC hype, the case of the MOOCs, starting with an innovation, actually, for autonomy, diversity, openness, and community participation with the CMOOCs. And then a new business model for the XMOOCs that scaled the MOOCs by aligning with instructivist, cognitive, and behaviorist pedagogy. And this is changing, but that was sort of the hype, the two waves of the MOOCs, which impacted also the focus that was suddenly shed, or the light that was suddenly shed on e-learning, on open online education also. And you can see it here, because I think what needs to be sort of, we need to acknowledge and remember that the whole first MOOC wave came out of a tradition for open education, for creating open education resources, for doing online distance learning. That's actually quite an old tradition. And then sort of focusing a bit on the European macro level, this morning we also discussed a lot of the policy frameworks and the way they are sort of, when they are trickling down through the national systems, they create a lot of policy papers, a lot of frameworks, which is maybe hard to handle on the meso level of institutions, and maybe hard to handle at least on the micro levels of communities of learners and teachers. But still, I think they're interesting to look at. If you look at the overall picture, going from mid-2014 until mid-2015, you would see that the overall non-European MOOCs was like going in hops and waves, and you would have certainly an increase in MOOC offerings in the European context, but a more steady, stable growth, which is actually also what applies to the entire picture of European e-learning. And this is context, I think, that is a context for Daria Teach. We're a project that caters for, in the first case, for like the multilingual digital humanities teaching communities in Europe. Our takeoff has been with the 7 members, and what could we offer, what kind of teaching experience do we have? And from that, we would like to scale out and learn from, include other members in the community and learn from their experience. But on the macro level, we are confronted with this unbundling, with a lot of exponential teaching technologies as well, and with the policy frameworks. And the meso level, which would be like the institutions, they are concerned with the scalability and the resource management that is presented as an opportunity, actually, also from e-learning. And then the micro level, we are concerned with teaching philosophies, learning environments, and quality assurance. So I think one of the frameworks, the policy paper from the EU Commission from 2013, which was opening up education, is actually interesting, which it really set a frame for a lot of what was going on the years to come on the more macro level. And the point was that open technologies would allow all individuals to learn anywhere, anytime, through any device with the support of anyone. Which is like a big value statement, but still it points to an open window in the intersection between knowledge economy and open education. And there were like 4 macro level fields of action suggested: open learning environments, to innovate for organizations, teachers, and learners; open educational resources, which are what we are designing, which would provide opportunities to use for opening up knowledge for better quality and access; and connectivity and innovation, which is the partnerships for infrastructures, knowledge infrastructures, institutional infrastructures, new products and services, and interoperability. And which was like a challenge for the national memberships of EU, a concerted effort to seize the opportunities of the digital revolution. That is also to provide connectivity and the possibility of actually accessing the internet with good broadband and things like that. And then the European University Association did a survey with 1/3 of their institutions in 2014, following up actually on the opening up education policy paper, which showed that actually the MOOC hype or waves shed sort of light and pushed the strategies for e-learning within EU. For example, it is stated in the report, it has not been prominent in the Bologna process discussions and only became a focal point for EU education policy in September 2013, actually to address e-learning as part of a coherent educational landscape. The report was on a survey on how was the 1/3 of the EUA institutions involved in e-learning, and that's like 100 institutions, something like that, higher education institutions. And they were almost all of them involved in some form of e-learning. And the report also shows, or the survey also shows, no disruptive change, but a gradual adaptation that has been taking on ever since, and that continues in different paces and scales across Europe. So you won't have these big waves, but you have actually gradual development. And this is, and we are back in 2014, sort of on the national level, the institutional e-learning policies. The blue one is that the institutions are actually developing or having e-learning policies, and the orange ones is that some faculties have their own strategy or no strategy at all. Actually, 1/5 of the institutions in the survey stated that e-learning was used in all disciplines in some form. And the interesting thing is also to look at that point, which disciplinary areas, domains, had embedded or implemented the use of e-learning, going from business and management over education and teacher training, and I think that's really significant. I think that's a disciplinary area where this has been really developed, also in a community-based way. Mathematics and informatics, of course, engineering and technology, yes. And then social sciences and humanities together with medical and natural sciences, with 22% of the institutions. And then the types of e-learning offered by the institutions also back in 2014. Let's note that the blended learning courses, which is actually offered also on campus in brick and mortar, but with digital enhancement, prevails here, followed by the online courses, which is part of a program, and then the blended learning degree programs and the online degree programs. But between that, which is interesting, I think, is the joint online learning with other higher education institutions. It's sort of that you actually also secure kind of scalability by joining up with other institutions to offer something.
Okay, so all of us who are working on Daria Teach come from the digital humanities community. For those of you maybe not in it, I'm not going to define it. So I won't define it because that's the worst thing you can ask someone in digital humanities, what is it? But it has, over the last number of years, become an area, I do think it is a discipline, that a lot of people feel they want to be part of. From different disciplinary spaces, a lot of younger people feel that this might be a way for them to skill up, tech up, and we've had some conversations about using that word this morning, so that they might get jobs. I think because it's been a small community traditionally, many of us have turned to doing lots of training as opposed to just teaching. It took a very long time for many of us to convince our institutions to have not just courses, but then programs. And so a lot of people learned in much more informal ways through workshops. There are flourishing summer schools. And so a lot of us began by doing training. There's also the issue of getting to training. There's great summer schools, there's great workshops, but not everybody can afford to go there. And so one of the interventions we decided on when we began Daria Teach was that could we create out of the training materials, the teaching materials we use, inviting other people to contribute, creating an open, a networked online platform that could be created by the community, for the community, however you might define it. So we had some priorities, we had some areas that we very much wanted to target. We had some areas that we felt philosophically we wanted to achieve. We wanted the platform and the offerings to be open. We wanted them to be accessible, transparent, how you could use and reuse them. We wanted this platform to be very collaborative. So we have started off, you'll see in a couple of hours, with a number of what we call courses and workshops. Kind of the courses are pegged to 5 and 10 ECTS offerings, and the workshops are shorter, like what you might do in a day, a half day, 2 days. But we wanted to create this platform that other people could collaborate on it with us, either by adding new courses and workshops, translating what's there, localizing them in other ways. We are working very much within a European context, but we also wanted this to be able to be used and contributed to internationally. We also felt very strongly that our offering should be modular, so that somebody should be able to take not just the whole course, but even pieces of it and use it in different offerings or put it into their own institutional, we're using Moodle platform, and use it that way. So we are also, as we said, very much community driven. We want to create something that was student-centered and demand-driven. So if somebody comes and says, I'd like to create a workshop for something, we presume that there's some demand for that. There'll be a peer review process, and we'll include it. We're also very much experimenting, and in fact, one of the courses that will be launched tonight is in fact on multimodal literacies. We're very aware that we are teaching in a particular kind of environment, and that in part we're also training people to understand how to work in that environment. And it really is very experimental. There's nothing quite like this, or not that we could find when we were doing our research. And as Marianne said, we're not aspiring to be a MOOC, to have that same profit motive, but to give back to the community that we're in. So we had an event similar to the one that we've had the last couple of days last year in Belgrade. And one of the things we spoke about from the beginning of the project, and Tony Hall, who gave the keynote last year, also brought it up, is why can't we begin to think about teaching materials produced in this way as Daria Teach as a kind of publication? Why can't we begin to get credit for them in the way that we can get for articles, for example? So one of the design features of the platform and the environment that surrounds it is that we will have a peer review process for new modules, for translations, localization, so that people can put on their CVs that they've contributed to a peer review. In fact, we're using the word publication. So as I said earlier, open source, high quality, localized, both in terms of language and in terms of examples. So you might feel that my students can understand the instructions in English, but I would like to put examples in a different language, in a different period. So for example, I did with my colleague Roman Blair the introduction to TEI, and the first example is how to encode poetry, and I used a poem by W.B. Yeats. You might want to take that and use a medieval Spanish poem. So you could keep the instructions in English if you wanted, and change that as a way of localization. We also wanted to create a dialogue in the digital humanities community, broadly written, to foster innovative teaching in this space, and very much branch out and collaborate with other domain spaces, because so many of them intersect with what we're teaching and learning in digital humanities. So we wanted also to create a platform that the bar is a little higher than just putting your PDFs on the web. So we realized that it's going to be an effort. I can tell you it's an effort because I did a module of getting your materials in this way. On the other hand, we felt that for students coming to the platform, once they understand how one course works, the next one they'll understand how it works as well. In order to evaluate it, we felt there had to be certain structures to the courses, to the workshops. So we wanted them, they have metadata, they describe under what situations, how long it should take, so it should be a fairly transparent process, not just for students, but for teachers who might take these materials and bring them into their own classroom setting. We also want to partner with people who are delivering material for workshops, summer schools, either to repurpose what they're doing and put it into Daria Teach, or vice versa. And we already have a list of partners that we've been collaborating with or beginning to collaborate with, but we're very interested in speaking to others. So as Marianne has been speaking about, we very much realize that there's this trend that we are augmenting our face-to-face teaching practice with more digitally mediated. Of course, it's also what we do in digital humanities. And so we wanted to also collaborate in breaking down that digital divide. We targeted, and it's not so easy, I have to say, in creating these offerings so that they can both be used in a classroom setting that another teacher can take them, but also that we'll call them lone learners, people who don't have the advantage of either being in university, being in a university that has digital humanities or one of its sister areas, that they should also be able to use this to learn. And it's been a little tricky because on the one hand, if a teacher is bringing this into the classroom, you don't want to give away too much information because you want the teacher to be able to correct certain things, to be able to stimulate discussion. On the other hand, if you're on your own learning, you do need a different kind of reinforcement. So we think we've negotiated those two positions, but that's been one of the tricky and very interesting things to work with. So as I said, the audience are instructors in digital humanities, instructors in other disciplines who may not identify as being digital humanists, but would like to integrate some aspects of what we do in digital humanities in their teaching practice, and as I said, these kind of lone learners. So we had some requirements that we came up with very early on as a result of a user study that our colleagues in Greece did. So the modules, the workshops should be both theoretical and practical, that we believe strongly that we're not just teaching skills, that we're teaching methods and theories within a typically disciplinary space. They should be open, they should be freely available, and so we have a Creative Commons license on them. The courses also should be exportable. And one of the reasons we chose Moodle as a platform was because of the widespread adoption of it, and that people would be able to import what we've done into their own platforms and adjust them to their teaching situations. We also wanted it pegged to something so that people would realize how large their engagement is. This must be a little old because this was one of the things that we came out of the user study. They should be 10 to 14 weeks. They are. Some of them are the 10 ECTS, but some of them are 5s, and now we brought in this workshop, much shorter. Learning outcomes are always stated, and things get more complex as the term goes on, as the course goes on, like you would in a classroom. We also had an exercise where we benchmarked our aims to the delivery itself. And this is going to become even more key in the next phase of Dari Teach, which I guess begins tomorrow or maybe Monday after we all recover, which will be opening up the platform for other contributions and other collaborations. And so we will have, as I said, a peer review process that we will be benchmarking the new offerings against this. We have a quality development and assurance plan. We're also going to use that in the next phase when we begin to invite people to collaborate with us. So one of the things we did early on was figure out, well, what should we put our wares in? Our colleagues in Austria who've done the very heavy lifting of the technical development did a lot of work in trying to decide what kind of platform should we use. Should we build one? Should we use some kind of thing like Drupal or WordPress? Or should we use a virtual learning environment that we may adapt? And in fact, that is what we decided in the end. We're, as I said, using Moodle. It had a lot of things that we wanted, not everything, but so far I think that it's worked quite well in meeting a lot of the expectations that we've had. As I said, we've gone from just thinking about 10 ECTS modules to these 3 different kinds of offerings. Workshops are, as I said, the equivalent that you might do in a half day or 3 days. It also lowers the bar for people who might like to collaborate or demonstrate or teach one particular thing, one particular skill or method. Our first course, this Introduction to Digital Humanities that my colleague Kostas has been working on, is different from all the rest. So we had a lot of discussions at the very beginning. How do we describe digital humanities? We could have decided to write, a long essay, and probably everybody would have taken exception to it. Because whatever perspective you have, there are many other perspectives about what digital humanities is, and even the histories are fragmented. And we figured it would be out of date. So instead we decided we're going to have videos. We're going to have a lot of videos, and we're populating it now, but ultimately, in fact, probably after Monday, you will also be able to contribute. So we have 2 strands. I'm not sure if that's here. One is an introduction to digital humanities, which is people saying, this is what I think digital humanities is. and for quite a number of them, we at Maynooth have gone to conferences, a few conferences, and asked a lot of people this particular question. We also have a second strand, digital humanities, is it called In Practice? No. And that is more in-depth, people talking about what they do in digital humanities. They tend to range from about 3 minutes to the longest I think we have is 8 minutes. But it allows for a lot of people, a lot of voices from a lot of disciplines to say, for me, this is what digital humanities is, and this is what I do. They're all on YouTube, and we decided to work that way because we also wanted discovery in different ways, that people might find us on YouTube, digital humanities, and think, oh, this might be an area I'd like to work in, or I didn't even know it existed. They all come with metadata, so you can tell exactly who's on the videos. There's extra reading on there. The course that I did with my colleague Roman is text encoding in the TEI. It's an introduction to text encoding. It was meant to be the most introductory course to TEI. It also talks about modeling with XML particularly. So how does this environment work? And on top of that, my colleague Toma, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, did one for digitizing dictionaries. So what we decided at the very beginning was that if we had information in our intro on modeling, he wouldn't do it all over. In fact, it's already worked so far. He took some of our modules, our units, and brought it into his dictionary one and just changed it slightly so that it worked for his environment. Multimodal literaries, my colleague Claire, who introduced us, designed this one. It is, in fact, very much key to how we teach and learn in this environment, because we've made a commitment that all the modules should have multimodal content. So they can take video, audio, text, and images. Sound studies, Marianne and her colleagues in Aarhus worked on that. Again, it's very theoretical as well as practical. We have 2 workshops that we're launching this afternoon. Angeliki is a postdoc, and she did one on spatial image analysis. Again, one set of tools, one idea that she's working with. And introduction to conceptual modeling, Panos Konstantopoulos from, again, the Athena Research Center, on conceptual modeling and ontologies. So those are the offerings that we're going to have this today. But I wonder if there's a slide in there about the other ones that will come out in the next few months. Oh, here they are. So we're going to have a second round next of quality assurance on the modules we have. Out of that, build the best practice documentation so that we can invite other people to contribute. We have quite a few more modules that we're going to ingest before June, before our funding ends. Digital scholarly editing, and Elena, who just stepped out, that's going to be her course with Marjorie Burkhart. Page versus screen that my colleague Steph has done. Introduction to image annotation, which is a workshop. Karolina Badamarowski has done that. And building and modeling photographic archives that Vinayak Dasgupta is working on. The other things we're thinking of, and we've had a workshop for the last day and a half, and a lot of people have been very generous in helping us think through how do we create a model for sustainable co-creation of this platform. That, as I said earlier, we very much developed it as a community-based platform. So we very much want to collaborate with other people in other places to make this, in fact, the word that came up a little earlier was a community-based co-collaborative platform. We are going to establish probably 2 editorial boards. The first one will be for the videos. And I think that might happen much sooner because we're a little ahead on that, and it's a single object that we're dealing with. And so that will happen quite quickly. Kostas has done a lot of work in having documentation, which will be available from this evening, on how to contribute a video. We'll expand the community itself, and some of you, I hope, will be interested in collaborating with us on creating context. We've been thinking quite a lot, what does peer review of these kinds of offerings, objects, intellectual output mean? And this is an area in digital humanities that we've been dealing with for a very long time. How do you peer review digital scholarship? It's not as easy as peer reviewing a monograph or a journal. Much of what makes a digital project is invisible, except if you look under the hood. And even if you get access to the back end of a server, it's very hard to understand what's going on and what decision process was made. So we're thinking maybe instead of just having a peer review where at the end you'll create a workshop, for example, and someone will come in at the end and say, I like this, I don't like this, even if we give them some criteria. So we're thinking of working with a different kind of concept, maybe this idea of trusted user groups, so that we might have, say, 3 people who have some interest or expertise in the workshop or course being offered, and they will work with the people who are doing the offering from an early stage to a later stage, because we realize there's a lot of work to create one of these. There'd be no point in inviting someone to create it, and at the very end having a peer reviewer say, no, we don't like that. So it'll be more of a collaborative model in and of itself. And lastly, as I said earlier, we would like to create a conversation where people who do this scholarship can get credit for it in the same way that they can get credit for, say, publishing an article. That's me done. Thank you.
So that's great. We have time for questions now, and I'm ready to bring the microphone to somebody. Everything was clear and interesting. You are okay. So, something to add? Yeah.
So for the people who joined us just this afternoon, I know you haven't seen what Daria teaches, but I was curious how many of you think you might be interested in contributing to a system like the one that we've been talking about. You know, that's online, that anybody can use, that other people could take your materials and use them in another environment. Is that something you'd be interested in, or you think, no, I want to keep my teaching materials to myself and my students, of course?
Yeah, I have a question. You think of open, but it's only English materials, or do you?
Thank you. Yeah, hi. I have the question if it's only for materials in English, or are you open to include also courses in other languages already?
Oh, no, absolutely. We did want courses in other languages. One of the things we've said is that we would like things, for example, for the videos, for the introduction to digital humanities, we welcome videos in other language, but we like them subtitled, at least in English. So one of our videos has been... This is working? So one of our videos, the first one, the My Digital Humanities, I think we have translated into 13, is it? How many? Sorry? 8. Oh, I exaggerated. But there are many more languages, and you could come up to my number 13 that I have in my head. So yeah, we have that in 8 languages. We made a big effort. We tried to get everyone. We couldn't get Mate, though, to translate it. I've tried. Yes, so we'd like that. So we're very happy, in fact, particularly for the videos, and if it's a video, to have English subtitles. But the course materials itself, yes, absolutely.
Thank you. So I have just arrived, but in terms of contributing, I'm very interested. I'm from Leipzig, and I'm leading SYNERGIES Digital Classics, which is an international consortium of digital classics programs. We have material online. They are open, class outlines, slides, videos, of course, in English. But we are thinking of other languages and subtitles. For example, we have a strong community in Brazil. They want to add subtitles in Portuguese for their community and also other countries. And other data, so our data are on GitHub. So in terms of interest, definitely I'm very interested. I'm here, so maybe we can talk about that. And definitely we can give our material to Daria Teach in order to expand our community. So thank you.
That's fabulous. Want to say anything? No? No. Oh. Elena, yeah. Elena, you stepped out of the room just when I mentioned you.
Sorry, I had to run for a second. A question about the partnership you already have established. It seems to me that they have established with like infrastructure like Clarin and all the Daria aspect. Do you envisage in future, for instance, a partnership with a university that may just take your course and give credit to the students? So it is possible, for instance, to get in contact with an university that may want to offer that as an e-learning facility?
Yes, it's actually the materials open for institutions, but also for teachers, simply to take and put into the local learning management system and to offer it. It's created under a CC license, so yeah. But obviously, it would be really interesting to collaborate on another level with universities, with institutions, also to exchange knowledge on how do we do these things. How does it work within an institutional context? If you cater from a platform that also favors localized material. I think that would be really, really interesting. It would put a lot of knowledge to us. We would really like that.
And one of the things that we didn't speak about very much was, obviously our name is Daria Teach, so we have an association with one of the research infrastructures, Daria and the Digital Arts and Humanities, but we've also been, while we're here, in conversation with Clarin about doing a joint initiative. And so one of the things that we're doing in this phase, this 3 months certainly between now and when the project ends, is to develop a sustainability plan, and part of that has to do with working within the infrastructures, so that the platform is sustained. One of the things that happens with a lot of teaching materials is that it goes online. There's a project, someone does a workshop, they put it online, people might use it, and then it disappears. And so one of the things that we're able to offer, or we hope to be able to offer, is a sustainability of those materials.
Hi, I'm Adam Krimble. I feel like I'm going to do a bit of a response paper to this right afterwards, actually, because working on a very similar project, and sustainability is something that we were very much concerned with as well. And I noticed you said a couple times your funding's running out, and one of the things that my project chose to do was to absolutely avoid funding and to completely avoid institutions, because then there are no costs. So has funding been a useful thing for you to do this, or is it actually just hamstringing you as you try to figure out how to sustain it once the funding goes away?
I think I can speak for everyone. If we didn't have funding, we wouldn't have done it. So it has enabled the project to happen. But we're not just thinking about sustainability now. We've been thinking about it for quite a long time. In fact, before the grant was ever put in. So all of us who are involved in Daria, and we're involved, most of us, with one of what's called the VCCs, one of the kind of subgroups of DARIA, which is education and research, but not our colleagues in Austria. They're from a different group, VCC1, for infrastructure. And so we approached Mate and said, would you be willing to develop it and host it? And DARIA has a model for this, because we realized we wanted it somewhere that would be stable within an institution that has a commitment, and their commitment spreads through the way the DARIA network works so that it would be sustained over time. So yeah, so it's been built in from the very beginning of the project, and our conversations now are, how do we sustain it as a project, as a publication, if I can use that word again, and most community-driven, even e-publications need some funding model to work. So no, I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I don't know if you know. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have a question on evaluation and also credit for the students in terms of certificates and these kind of things, because the model of the MOOCs, what has become a need of students to get some kind of accreditation that I did this course. So are you planning to offer this for educational badges or certificates or some kind of certification for a student and follow and finishes a course, or just the materials there?
No. but we are, part of the quality assurance is actually building on the European credit transfer system. So we have measured our coursework out according to the ECTS, which will make it possible for an institution and teacher to embed it, and we cannot give credits. It's accredited higher education institutions that give credits, and I think that's really important. That's a backbone in the quality assurance system, and that was exactly what I was pointing to in the first part of the keynote. That the unbundling, we have an educational system that is still solid and is catering to a certain extent for open education, for equity in education, for open access to education. And I think the quality assurance that provides also the possibility for mobility, either you go on exchange but you know that you can get your credit, or that you make the mobility via a platform that you can take something from that has a quality assurance and put it into your own course. I think that's important.
Having said that, we have thought about, and there were a lot of conversations earlier on in supporting, say, loan students through the process. Not necessarily to give them a certificate at the end, although if that becomes important, maybe it wouldn't be a certificate, a badge, or I don't know how valuable if they are. But certainly I think, regardless of what you get at the end, the need to support people who aren't doing the course through an institution. And probably that would be a higher priority than figuring out the kind of a certification process. But possibly if this is successful and we continue and that is something that's desirable, that would be something that we could certainly look at. Oh.
Thank you very much. Apologies if I missed this in the presentation, but it seems that nowadays when we talk about digital technology, we can't escape talking about analytics, talking about looking at user data, collecting it, analyzing it, presenting it, opening it up, whatever that might be. Are there plans in this project to do things with user data?
Mate can answer.
Back to Susan.
Yeah.
Thanks. Well, first we have to get some user data, I guess. So, and then what you mean like for evaluation or for kind of getting feedback on the usage? Well, I think for that in anonymous way, we certainly might. I mean, we did not discuss that yet, as far as I can remember. And we also kind of trying to lower the threshold so that the people don't have to log in to get to so they can, but also allowing an anonymous access to the information. So we will have to sort it out. But I think we first need to wait until we get some critical mass of material data.
Obviously, you know, if we're successful and have enough users, that does make sense. You know, which courses, which subsections of courses, are people watching the whole video, whether they're paying attention or not, we can't say. But those things, yes, would be very useful, because in some sense, we've developed these courses, we've, you know, done some research, we're creating best practice, but that we still need to see how that translates. So, yeah. Other questions or comments?
My question is related to pedagogical issue. You know, in the traditional and face-to-face teaching learning process, students can have access to just interact. They can interact among themselves with teachers, with the institution personnel and the like. While students just interact among each other, they can just have group identity. They can just form collective efficacy to change their environment, the world, and the like. And even they can also form shared goals. You know, it can enhance togetherness, unity, and all these things. Just unless they can interact and discuss on the issues, you know, they will go just independently, just isolatedly. Therefore, this is to say that while just developing these types of online resources, at least there should be a mechanism of just creating these interaction and togetherness with the courses. You know, mechanisms might be just integrated while you just develop different types of resources. Is there any beginning on that? And what is your plan?
Yeah, we have talked about that. So there are a number of ways of doing it. And I thought you were going to ask a slightly different question. So I had a different kind of answer I was thinking of, because one of the things that came up this morning was not every institution in every country has enough bandwidth, quite literally, to have their students be on the web and log into Moodle. So one of the things that we were asked earlier, are there any plans to make this downloadable in some way? It's slightly different. And we've said teachers can put it into their environment. But one thing we did talk about a long time ago in the project, but we haven't talked about recently, is creating sections, as it were, for the various courses for, say, a teacher and students to work within. So for institutions that don't have Moodle or some other way to you know, export the platform, that could be one way of doing it. And we have talked, and we've talked quite a bit of, and in terms of the sustainability, is some of that might be a kind of more interactive environment where there might be a number of individuals who are the, I don't know, we have to think of a better word, not a tutor, because that's not a really great title, but someone who's like the TI mentor for the year, or for a few people, and they would be part of a kind of chat environment so that people can get help. So that is something that we're thinking about as a next phase, definitely. Yeah. Are there other questions, comments?
So last one, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a short, but so for example, if we are interested to use your infrastructure and platform, but adapt it to our needs, for example, different type of like a teaching or personalize that we have a different paths, and then we can either specialize or evaluate which kind of teaching possibilities are better paths. So how can we do that regarding work collaboration with you?
Yeah, so I think that falls into the localization category. And so...
it's more like maybe... more demanding integration. But yeah, anyway, like how it would be the possibility to.
Well, I think it depends on what exactly you're asking, but if it's that I want to, oh, Mate has the answer.
I think, again, this is a thing that we need to see, but what we imagined is, and this goes beyond localization, I think, because what I understood is you would like to have kind of new or other functionality maybe, or other structures and so on. And the two ways we are thinking of is the one is that you can take our material, which is basically Moodle courses, and put it in your Moodle instance and do with it whatever we want. The other would be that we are willing and interested in expanding the functionality. We already did quite a few stuff customizations of the Moodle, and we would be, if there is a good, nice use case, to add new functionality to provide it, and then so you can create your course within our instance and yeah, and use that.
You had the right answer. Any other? I think we're kind of at time, isn't that right?
Yes, exactly.
Because that clock is always right.
We applaud again, Marianne and Suzanne. Thank you a lot.